So let me say to Newt Gingrich, who's on top of the Republican Party right now, Newt, you have a lot to learn from young people. Newt, you ought to listen more. I know he likes to preach and teach. That's fine. But there's a time to listen. And right now, the economy of this country is so bad that we need to listen to people who say, I smell something. Well, what do you smell, sir? I smell corruption in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street. I'm a Harvard boy, economics, Harvard Business School. I went to school with the big bankers. I know them. Corruption. When they get bailed out and you don't have a chance, fall on your face sometimes and see what government lifts you up. It won't be the American government. They're too busy lifting up Wall Street.
Now, you've talked a lot about the idea of being too big to fail.
Yes.
Banks are too big to fail.
Yes.
How would you reform that?
I would eliminate that portion of the law. If a bank fails, let it fail. Others will pick up the pieces. Depositors are protected. Depositors don't fail. That's why Franklin Roosevelt and a congressman from Texas started the FDIC. As a matter of fact, Roosevelt was against it. And Garner in Texas said, no, I insist on it. Texas does it. It protected its depositors, not the bank, the depositors. So if a bank fails, the depositors get their money back. But the bank executives don't get forgiven debt and don't get bonuses and don't get big pay. Too big to fail is not a good reason to have that kind of protection. Let me tell you why. It's called moral hazard. When a banker has no consequences for taking chances, except good consequences, he makes more money, he gets a bigger bonus. If there's no downside, what will the banker do, Kate? Take more chances. That's called moral hazard. Too big to fail has introduced moral hazard. It started under Bill Clinton. It grew up under George W. Bush, and Barack Obama, who promised change, didn't deliver a single thing. Too big to fail, still the law. I would go further. I would put Glass-Steagall Act back on the books. Bill Clinton eliminated it in 1999. It's been a disaster. We've had 500 banks fail since then. We need to separate investment banks from commercial banks. You'll have fewer failures, and those who fail will deserve what they get, nothing. Third thing I would do is I would increase the capital ratio of a bank the bigger it got. Now, it's just the opposite. Small banks have about 10% capital. If they have $100 million loaned out, they've got $10 million protected in the bank. That's called a 10% capital ratio. But the bigger the bank becomes, the smaller the capital ratio. So if they get to $1 billion, which is 10 times 100 million, they don't have 10% anymore. They have 5%. If they get to 100 billion, they have 2%. Historically, it's been wrong. I would get the temperature right again by increasing the capital ratio as the bank gets bigger. I would make those three changes as soon as possible.
Now, other than dealing with the economy, what else do you want to change as president?
The fact that Washington is bought and sold. I don't want to skip over that. Bank reform won't get done until we get the big bank checks out of the room. Health care reform is needed too. And it won't get done, as Mr. Obama found out, until he gets the insurance checks and the pharmaceutical checks and the tort lawyer checks and the big hospital checks out of the room. You know who needs to be in the room? Nurses, doctors, patients. We'll get a better healthcare system and we'll drive the cost down. Do you know that insurance companies are protected in Obamacare, in the law, by not having to compete? They have a monopoly in each state. Oh, you didn't know that, did you? Insurance companies are the only industry not under the Sherman Antitrust Act. Teddy Roosevelt must be rolling over in his grave. Insurance companies need to compete. Right now, you can't buy medical insurance across the state line. Why not? I'll tell you. Insurance companies give big checks to congressmen and presidents to be protected from competition. I will change that. I will put them under the Sherman Antitrust Act, and health costs will go down. Those are the kind of things I'd like to do. I'd like to make us energy independent. I'd like to give small business a relief. They create new jobs. I'd like to tariff foreign oil from Saudi Arabia so we'll quit sending Marines on oil duty. I'd like us to stop being the policemen of the world. I want to rebuild the country. It's not Afghanistan. It's America. And I will do practical, hard-hitting things to get that done. And a final point, if I could. The biggest hole in the jobs bucket is unfair trade from China. I will stop it. I've been to China many times. I have yet to see an American president stand up to China. I will. I will let their products come into America, but they have to meet minimum standards. No child labor, no forced labor, no prison labor, minimum environmental controls, and they have to let our products go to their country. You know what that's called? Fair trade. I'm not a free trader. I'm a fair trader. And if we solve that problem, if we have a president with the guts to stand up and do it, we'll have more manufacturing jobs than we've had since World War II. We've lost 80% of our manufacturing jobs in the last 15 years. Most of them to China, and I will stop it. We will make things in America again.
Now, the election is just less than a year away. You seem to have a lot of ideas, but the country hasn't seen much of Buddy Roemer yet. Why not, and what's going to change in 2012?
Well, you've heard my ideas. You can see why. I mean, no Republican believes like I do that Washington, D.C. is corrupt. I can tell they don't believe it because they take the money from them. They take lobbyist money. They take PAC money. They take super PAC money. I mean, John Huntsman has a super PAC that his dad finances and gives him all of his money in New Hampshire. No problem, except one thing. It's against the law. Super PACs are supposed to be separate from the candidate. Huntsman could do it legally. He would take the money from his father and spend it like he wants to, but he'd have to pay taxes on it. Oh my God, don't pay taxes. Let's break the law. Look at Newt Gingrich just got a super PAC. Mitt Romney's the worst. He's got 3. Maybe he's not the worst. Maybe Rick Perry is. He has 7. Michelle Bachmann has 1. Ron Paul, my favorite candidate other than me, has 1 even. Enough already. Why don't we have clean elections? Why don't we get a president free to lead? Why don't we get somebody to stand up for that? People say, well, you can't win, Buddy, with only $100. I can. If I get 1 million people, I always thought that I would get on the debate stage as being the only congressman and governor running and raise hell about business as usual. Ask my Republicans to join me in a pledge not to take special interest money. Appeal to the American people to rebuild a nation. You can tell I'm excited about it. This is what I do. I have not been invited to a single debate, and you ask why. There have been 15 of them. I'm 0 for 15. You ask why? They changed the rules at every debate to keep me out. The first was you had to be a formal candidate. So I announced in July and August in Dartmouth in New Hampshire. I became a formal candidate. So I went to them, they said, oh, you have to have 1%. Well, not being on a debate, it's hard to get 1%, but I got 1%. I went to them again, they said, oh, you had to have 2%. So I got 2%. I went to them again 3 debates ago, and they said, oh, you had to raise $500,000 plus get 2%. I said, $500,000? Is that how you run for president? They measure how much money you have? There's something wrong about this. They keep changing the rules to keep me out. And I know why. I'll ask Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich how they are the 1%er, that's Mitt Romney, $10,000 bet the other night. Is that embarrassing? And Newt, I'll tell you, And Newt Gingrich is the lobbyist for the 1%. That's how he makes his living. You know who paid him $1.8 million? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They should be disbarred. I thought the 10% was an embarrassment. You know, it was a faux pas, a slip of the tongue.
The bet.
The $10,000 bet. But it exposed Mitt Romney for who he is. A nice guy, a decent guy, but he's not in touch with America. A $10,000 bet where I'm from is a bad idea. It's more money than people make in my state working 3 months full time. It's a joke. It's an embarrassment. It's a sad moment. And to have him and Newt talk about it, or him and Rick Perry talk about it, I think they ought to be given a yellow slip on the next debate. That's what I would do. Have them both get off the debate, and let's have some fresh blood in. And let's see how this Louisiana boy does with his 2 little Harvard degrees and his success in banking and his experience as congressman and governor. I'm not the world's greatest debater, but compared to those two, I'll take my chances with Newt.
Now, you mentioned a pledge that you would invite the candidates to put a $100 cap on donations. Is that something you want to do in 2012?
Yes, I would. That'll be my first. That'll be House Bill 1 when I'm elected president. Here's what we'll do, and here's the pledge that I'm asking them to sign. All campaign contributions are fully disclosed. No super PACs, number 2. Number 3, PAC contributions would be limited to individual contributions. That's $2,500. I can live with that. I invited them to do $100 to make it reachable by every American. But looking at the Republican field, I don't think they're in touch with every American. So set whatever limit they want to, but have it announced and have PAC contributions no greater than that. Number 4, I would not allow lobbyists to bring a check. They can come see the senator, they can come see the congressman, they can come see the president, but no fundraising and no check. You can either be a registered lobbyist or a fundraiser. You can't be both. 5, I would have 48-hour reporting of all disclosures. Now it's 120 days. Hell, the election's over before you find out who gave them money. Every 48 hours, report your contributions. We live in the age of the internet. It can be done. And finally, I would have criminal penalties for congressmen and presidents who violate this law. Now it's just a slap on the wrist.
Right. Now, even before you get into office, are you going to invite your fellow candidates to join
I
you in
am.
this
We've
PAC?
already done that. We did that about a week or 10 days ago. We sent out a formal written pledge to all the candidates, to the president. We're not leaving anybody out. You think money in politics is a problem? You think corruption is a problem? Then stand up. Don't wait till you take office. You could make this happen in the next year. Lead, darn it. You're supposed to be leaders. One way to measure a president, a woman or a man, is are they unafraid to lead? I am unafraid to lead